What's up, everybody? Happy Atlas Telecast Tuesday. Dan Kane's back here again with fantastic technical production from B. We've got Eric Hall on the computer. We've got Aldis on the computer taking your questions. If you're on Instagram Live or YouTube Live, ping in, let us know you're there. Ask us any questions you want. Today we have another fantastic Atlas Telecast Tuesday, and it's State of the Industry interview with our fantastic special guest, Eric Elias and
Afternoon.
Eric Guo.
Nice to meet you.
So, if you don't know Eric Guo, he's a director, and if you don't know Eric Elias, he does special effects. Is that right?
Primarily pyrotechnics, but yes, all kinds of special effects.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, really happy to have you both here today.
Thank you.
Hope everyone out there is having a great Tuesday, no matter where you are in the world. And we're really excited to dig into this. So if those of you who are just tuning in don't know, we're doing a series of interviews called State of the Industry, where we speak with different professionals in the motion picture, film, and television industry, hear about what they're up to, how they got started, why they're still doing it, and what is the state of the industry as we live in it now today. Global macroeconomic crisis looming, different challenges that we face, but we're all making the most of it, and we're doing what we love, hopefully. So yeah, really happy to have you both here. And I love doing this, so that's why you're going to see me doing these, because I love making lenses. I love working in the motion picture industry, and I hope all of you out there, no matter where you are in your career path, are finding something you love to do and continually developing your abilities, your experience, and your interests, and learning more and more about the world and sharing your experiences with the present and the future. So, Mr. Elias, tell us, how did you first get interested and started in pyrotechnic effects?
When I was in school, I spent a great deal of time in motion picture, television, theater arts, play production, and then when I got to graduate school, I didn't have time to take 6 weeks out to do a student film or put on a play. A friend of mine was very, very much into pyrotechnics, and he expressed an interest in possibly getting into it, getting involved, and I went and did my first fireworks show. And it turned out that I had an affinity for it and got my first license for pyrotechnics before I even finished graduate school. And from there, I've sort of had two completely wildly disparate careers going the entire time, my adult life.
Now, when you say while you were in school, did you grow up here in Southern California? And for those of you who don't know, Atlas, we're based in Glendale, California, and this is our factory, our headquarters. And every Wednesday we do an event called Wednesday, where we invite people into the building and do an experience for the community where people can learn about the latest in cinematography, cameras, meet each other, try different lenses, and kind of experience the world of cinematography in sort of a community setting with free coffee. But we are LA folks. Did you grow up in Southern California?
I grew up in New York, came out to California for high school, college, and graduate school.
Awesome. If you don't mind me asking, where did you go to high school?
Went to Chatsworth High School, very big surfer school, and then went to UCLA for college and Pepperdine for graduate school.
That's so cool. My parents went to Chatsworth High.
Oh.
Yeah. So they were both from Northridge, and Porter Ranch area is where my grandmother lived, and they lived on Plummer Street. So they lived on different parts of Plummer in the valley. I'm a valley person.
I know the area very well.
Nice.
When I first got here, I still had a bit of a New York accent. I had been appearing in front of the camera in New York. When I got out here, unless they were doing Guys and Dolls, the accent kind of got in the way, and that was when I transitioned to backstage and technical theater.
How long did it take for you to get rid of the accent? Consciously.
If I talk to
Consciously.
someone with a New York accent, it all comes flooding back. For years, my sister cultivated hers and kept it. But
Awesome.
I was very happy to fit in and not have people identify my roots necessarily when I first opened my mouth.
Oh, wow. Was that just because, or was it embarrassing, or why did you think that you needed to adjust to the environment?
Well, I'm sort of a natural mimic. If I talk to someone from Texas for too long, I come away from that with a Texas accent.
Wow, interesting.
I have to be careful if I talk to people from the South, because if they pick up on the fact that I'm now starting to sound like them, they may think that I'm mocking them. But it's just something my ear does.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Get in where you fit in, as they say.
Yes, exactly.
Cool. And so at Chatsworth High, they had a theatrical arts program.
They had a very large theater arts program. They had both a theater arts acting program, and they had a very significant theater arts technical program. We used to supply theater arts technical service to other private schools in the community. And one year, one of my first years there, we did an incredibly resounding, successful version of The Music Man and raised enough money to purchase equipment to have the first television studio in all of the LA Unified School District.
Holy
Wow.
smokes.
That's really cool.
This was open reel, black and white.
Oh. Wait. No, don't.
Would those be like Vidicon cameras, like a tube camera?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
2 cameras. If you shine too much light in them, you ran the risk of burning the image into it. Lens covers on at all times. We learned to clean tape heads, and splice videotape, properly store the reels. It was quite the learning experience at that point in time.
That's really cool. I think that my father was part of the technical school there, like doing technical drawings and learning sort of like engineering and manufacturing processes. So I'll have to get him in here. I think they called it industrial arts at
Yes.
that time, right? Yeah, that's so cool.
Is that like a? So this was a private school, not a public school?
It's a public school, yeah.
They had these kind of. Wow.
Yeah, so I think
don't
that's
have that
really
now.
cool and interesting because, you know, public schools, there are still some traces of these kind of
Around.
programs available in some of the public schools. Like my daughter's elementary has sort of some STEM program with like robotics training and computer programming. And when I was in high school and junior high, we had a really good photographic program in junior high, which is kind of rare these days, I think, where we actually had a darkroom where we would process the film in junior high. And that's where I first got access to darkroom photography and became interested in photography the way that I am today. So that's really like the inception of my interest in being a cinematographer in a way, besides watching really awesome movies.
That's interesting. We didn't have that. We had like a wood shop, metal shop, and auto shop, but we didn't have any arts programs.
The big three.
Yeah, we had no arts programs. So that's how I got into cars, just because of that.
That's so cool.
We built a Volkswagen Bug that was our whole project, the year-long project for our senior year in high school. It was from nuts and bolts to full-on. He's done it. The teacher's already done it like 7 times, he said. So he knows what's going on.
The same car? They
Yeah,
took the
same
same
car.
car down to the...
He knew. He was just like, he just wanted to see who was actually smart. So that's interesting. We never had art program. The only one we had was media tech, and that was like to run the morning announcements. And instead of like yelling over the speaker comm, now there's a video everyone can watch every morning, kind of like a news report.
Oh,
It's so different now for kids. I think about YouTube, which wasn't something that was even, you know, we had the internet in 1995, 96, and I was late in high school around that time. But to see kind of the availability of information and sometimes disinformation that's put out there on the internet, it's so interesting to see that kind of revolution in a way of information being broadly distributed so quickly. And like YouTube, you know, can be both a great school, great technical school, and a great place to pick up bits of information, but then some of it is just, you know, either intentionally incorrect or accidentally incorrect. And so sometimes you have to be careful of what you ingest, you know?
well, I did the morning announcements, which were audio only through the PA system. And then when my son went to high school, also in Los Angeles, he was on the school paper for a while. But their morning announcements, every classroom had a television monitor, and they basically did a little on-campus newscast every morning with video. And
That's
the
basically-
audio-only announcements had gone away by the time he graduated.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. That's basically what we had. There's no audio, it's just video. Yeah, it's the kids actually running it too. That's the really good part.
And look at us now. Here we are live streaming, just like back in the day.
Yeah, minus news broadcast. Something I didn't want to do.
So, you were finishing up high school, and then your friend told you, hey, we should get involved in doing this? Or tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, he was a very, very big outdoor fireworks aficionado, and he would search the papers, and he would drive anywhere to watch any fireworks show, even if he had to watch it from the parking lot. And his lifelong goal had always been to light off one of those big ones on the 4th of July. And I asked him why we didn't just find out who did it, and perhaps we could help, and it never occurred to him. So we went to instead of the internet, we went to the Yellow Pages, which is a classified telephone directory, and we flipped it open to fireworks, and we went to the biggest display out on the page. And initially we were very excited because they had an 800 number, and we could call them for free. So I dialed the number, and a nice woman named Natalie answered the phone, and I said, hi, we want to help on a fireworks show. And she said, not a problem. Next Saturday, come down to this address in the City of Commerce, ask for Joe. So we went down, and we did our very, very first ever fireworks show, which was quite an experience and not at all what I was expecting. But I did enjoy it, and we decided that we would pursue it and perhaps go on to try and get our licenses. And from there, I have come to this point today where I have 3 California state licenses for pyrotechnics and explosives, 2 federal licenses, a flamethrower permit, and 8 Nevada licenses.
Wow.
You need
That-
a license for flamethrower?
Yes, interestingly enough, flamethrowers right now are kind of the flavor of the month.
Yeah, because I have one and I didn't need it.
Only 2 states in the entire United States regulate flamethrowers. Maryland, who forbids them, and California, who regulates them and will give you a flamethrower permit to be able to use and operate yours. But remember, in California, a flamethrower has to have 3 criteria. It has to be portable, it has to go more than 10 feet, and it has to shoot a stream of flaming liquid. So the Elon Musk version, or anything that just uses propane vapor, is called not a flamethrower.
Oh, okay.
But I have had calls for flamethrowers in the last 4 or 5 months, more than I have in the previous 10 years. There was one for a press event for Mad Max Furiosa. Tyler the Creator wanted some handheld flamethrowers on stage for his show. And I just got another inquiry for some flamethrowers for a televised wrestling event. So, like I said, they're the flavor of the month right now.
Propane and propane accessories, Bobby.
Oh, that show's funny.
Wow, that's so cool. So, tell me about that first day, because that must have been quite something to have never done it, and then you show up, and it's sort of like, you know, for those of us who are in the film industry, we often start as production assistants, which means that we do whatever the boss asks us to, whether that's picking up a coffee, taking out the trash, Xeroxing papers, running something from A to B. Sometimes people call them gophers because you have to go for this, go for that. But what was that first day like? I mean, I'm sure you can remember.
When you start off in outdoor aerial fireworks, day 1 is hands-on. The sum total of the training that I received prior to hand firing an outdoor aerial fireworks show consisted of, do you know how to light a flare? I said, like this. He goes, good, you do that row. So we were just thrown into the thick of it. We arrived down there, we found Joe, all the trenches had been dug for us, we dropped the aerial tube mortars into the ground, backfilled the dirt. Boxes of aerial shells came off the trucks. We sorted them out. My friend still has a picture of himself holding, I think, an 8-inch shell and a huge grin on his face. And we knew enough, having watched enough fireworks shows, that we would have to have a hard hat and safety glasses. And I went up to Joe and I said to him, should we maybe have hearing protection? And he said, what? And I said, I think you've answered my question. But all we had, we found some paper to stuff into our ears. So everything is ready for the show. We're handed our flares. Joe says, all right, I'm going to yell 3, and then you light 3, and I'm going to yell 4, and you light a 4, and I'm going to yell 6, and you light a 6, and at the end I'm going to call for the finale. And the sky got dark, and the show started, and he started calling out numbers, and I went up to light my first shell, and I had a road flare in my hand. I'm in a glove, and I was wearing long sleeves and long pants and sturdy shoes and my hard hat and my plastic goggles, and I pulled off the safety cap, and I touched the road flare, and I knew that I probably didn't want to be near the mouth of this thing. So I was kind of hunched down and leaning away, but I didn't know what to expect, and I touched the flare to the fuse, and it instantly disappeared into the shell, and poof, the thing took off, and the shock hit me, and I promptly fell on my butt. And I brushed myself off, and I stood up, because by then they were yelling for my number again, and the acrid, thick, black powder smoke is filling the air. There was like no wind that afternoon, and there's burning ash and debris flying everywhere, and guys are running around carrying more shells and cleaning out the tubes and dropping them down, and numbers are being called, and we're now dripping sweat, and the smoke is getting it under the glasses, and my eyes are tearing, and suddenly he calls for the finale, and the show is over. And I brush myself off, and I wipe off my face, and I go and I find my friend, and I go, "Is that what you were expecting?" And he looked at me and he says, "That was great!" And I said, "Oh, well, all right, if you're in, I'm still in. But I think going forward, armed with what I know, I think I know what better to be prepared for." And then about 10 years later, I was approached and asked if I would teach pyrotechnics to beginners. I said, absolutely. If I can keep somebody else's first day from being like mine was, it will be my pleasure. And I've been teaching pyrotechnics, indoor, outdoor, and theatrical, motion picture, special effects ever since.
That is so cool, because I think, teaching people about your own experiences is one of the most valuable things you can do. And that just sounds like such an amazing experience. So between that time and now, what would you say some of the major differences in the technology as far as safety or otherwise the advancements have been, as far as you can tell?
Well, there have been tremendous advancements in the colors of products available, and probably one of the biggest advancements in safety in all areas of pyrotechnics is both electrical firing and now wireless remote control for firing. When I started, huge amounts of pyrotechnics were fired off manually, literally, a guy with a road flare or a small torch. And you were right there next to it when the stuff went off. And electrical firing became more and more prevalent. Today in California, if someone is shooting a show with a road flare, it's only because they want to. There's a electric firing system in the truck. They've just chosen not to do it for the thrill. But initially they came out with very simple electrical firing systems. Sometimes it consisted of just a probe, and you would just touch it to contacts in sequence.
Like a nail board?
Exactly like a nail
Yeah.
board. Essentially, they would be a printed circuit board, an overlay of non-conductive material, so you just had little circles. And you would just touch the probe to the dots, and all you were doing was sending lead-acid battery power down the wire to the electric match. Then they started to develop firing systems that the initial ones were called clunker boxes. They used, most of the time, surplus telephone company stepping relays. And you would step through the sequence, and the relay would step, 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 get to the 10th one, reset, and step the next one down one step. And they literally went clunk, 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 clunk as you fired them. And after that, they had the first electronic firing boards. The initial ones used triacs. They went on to use ones with SCRs, and they started to have computer controls. In those early days, every company made their own. You would find an electrical engineer, electronics guy, who kind of was fascinated by fireworks, and he would build you a one-of-a-kind electronic firing system. And then they would get bored, lose interest, wander off, and you could never get it repaired or replaced or updated. And then a company called Pyrodigital here in California came out with a system which Well, they built more than one of it. They built quite a few of it. And they were, for the time, quite sophisticated. And you could buy one today, and then you could buy one 6 months or a year from now, and it worked with the first one. And they were always backwards compatible. And nowadays they have many, many competitors throughout the world who make electronic firing systems, which are computer controlled and which can operate using input from either time code, either SMPTE, MIDI, or a more robust version of firing called FSK. Then remember when the first wireless systems engaged to do a job in a hotel ballroom in San Diego at a hotel that's been there for many, many, many years. And I called down to the fire department. They were going to essentially recreate a haunting. They wanted to have a seance in the ballroom, and at various points in time during the evening, sparks would shoot out of the chandeliers or from the wall sconces around the room. So in motion pictures, we have all different kinds of what are called generically spark-producing devices, whether they're to simulate an electrical short circuit, or since the movie-going public has been taught by the cinema industry that when any bullet strikes any surface, no matter what they're made out of, sparks will shoot out and there'll be a ricochet. Whether it's cardboard, grass, brick, there's always sparks. So we have all kinds of different spark-producing devices. But they wanted the electrical short circuit simulation, and there was no way to run wires all over this ballroom. And I made some inquiries, and someone said, yeah, there's a guy in Hawaii who's just started making these wireless firing systems. He's trying to sell them. Nobody will try them. I says, I'll be happy to try it. So I called down to the fire department in San Diego. The hotel was a Hotel del Coronado. And I told him what I wanted to do, and he said, you want to do what? Where? You sure? I said, yeah, that's the idea. He goes, are you sure? I go, look, I understand you might be concerned. If you'd like, you can call the fire department up here in Los Angeles and ask them for a reference. Who should I talk to? Doesn't matter, whoever answers the phone. And then you can call the California State Fire Marshal's office and you can ask them for a reference. Who should I ask for? Doesn't matter. Whoever answers the phone, ask them if they know anything about me. So he calls back in an hour and he says, well, apparently you know what you're doing, so I'm going to give you the permit. So I go down there for a scout and I bring all this brand new, untested wireless equipment. And when I get to the Hotel del Coronado outside, and I've been back since to stay there as a guest, there's a very large brass plaque that proclaims it to be the largest wooden single structure in the western United States. And I went, oh, okay, I can see why they were curious why I would want to go into their ballroom and maybe set things on fire. So we deployed the wireless system, and it worked very, very well. I was very pleased with it. We were able to hide these little teensy receivers up inside of things and behind stuff, and it was quite convincing, and the sparks shot out apparently from nowhere. And since that time, the wireless technology has dramatically improved. They now have two-way systems, which let you actually talk back and forth between the receiver and the transmitter. The range has increased, the complexity has increased, the size has gotten smaller. There's that same company now makes devices for motion pictures that are essentially disposable. The cost is low enough on them that you can put it onto the car, drive the car off the cliff, have the car explode in midair, and not particularly care if you ever retrieve the receiver.
Now, for those two-way ones, is that useful to kind of check your system to make sure that it's capable of firing without firing? Is that sort of like a way of verifying that the receiver is working?
The whole point of the two-way is for continuity check.
Ah, nice, nice. Cool. Wow. So,
So, you know, like you're saying, from then until now, how has the education changed for people? Because I notice, like, every time I do one of the demos, I'm learning something, how to wire things differently from different people. And they're not wrong. It's just everyone has a different way of doing it. But for you, like, how has that changed educating people?
Well, when I started, it was all hands-on, on-the-job training. Motion picture industry then and now is very closely regulated by the labor force is controlled by the unions and access to it that way. And there's a safety program inside the unions. There are multiple steps working your way up the ladder to come to special effects. The outdoor fireworks industry used to run kind of like a pickup basketball game. I'm going to show up, call everybody you know. I'll bring a truck full of fireworks. Hopefully enough people will come to do the shows. There still isn't very much at all in the way of formal education. There is some reticence to pass knowledge on to people after you because people are concerned that it will displace them in the labor market. People are afraid that if I teach you to do something, you might take work away from me.
I mean, it's,
Traditional gatekeeping, right? Yeah.
I personally don't have that issue. I can't be in two places at one time. I have always been happy to teach. That is where Eric and I first met, was at a seminar. The California State Fire Marshal has a very extensive training program for fire safety officers. And they will spend a day or two or three learning all the various regulations, procedures governing occupancy, exit routes, generators, all manner of things, and they will learn about fire and special effects. And then on the last day, they will bring the fire safety officers out, and I will have a group of interested individuals, people who are involved in the licensing process, working on their upgrades, or who have been through the process and are now essentially giving back to others coming after them. And we will put on a demonstration essentially of almost one of everything, from the very smallest little miniature explosives used for models up to fairly significant pieces of deck cord that blow very large holes in drywall. And then we will set off gasoline bombs, walnut dust bombs, naphthalene bombs, black powder lifters. We'll blow up a propane bottle for them. And this lets the fire safety officers have an appreciation for what they're going to see and what is within the norm, what they should not be surprised with or concerned about if they see someone, doing these effects in close proximity to cameras or actors.
can you explain like the process of getting to the license that you currently hold now? When you're starting off, what do you have to do, step by step?
Sure. The motion picture special effects path is a Pyrotechnic operator special effects license. There are 3 steps. The first step, the beginner or trainee, is called the
Trainee
third class,
Yeah.
which only requires that you don't have to have any experience. You do have to find 5 other people who have a license of some kind for over 1 year that is equal to or higher than the license that you seek. You submit these 5 reference letters, a set of your fingerprints, the application and the fee, and once that's all processed and your background check is completed, you get to take a written test. You then have to have that license and maintain it for a minimum of 2 years, in which you can gain an ill-defined and amount of experience, which is called adequate. They don't actually define it very clearly, but the way you demonstrate your collection of adequate experience is for every different show, demonstration, effects job you work, you fill out a log page.
Yeah.
And you collect these log pages in a 3-ring binder, and when you have enough, you can submit it to the State Fire Marshal's office, and they will evaluate it for you before you try and make the next step, and they'll let you know you need more of this, you need more of that, or you're ready to go. You can sign up, put in your application, and then you can get a special effects second class card. This allows you to actually supervise people with a third class card. This allows you to actually operate under just your own license. The third class can only work under the immediate, direct, and constant supervision of a second or first class. Once you have your second class license, you can actually do stuff. You can actually set off black powder bombs. You can actually do bullet hits, things like that. And you have to maintain that for a minimum of 2 years. Also, once again, keep track of what you did your work, make your log pages, fill them out. Get 5 more letters from people who have a license that is equal to or higher than the one you're now seeking to upgrade to. At that point, you're limited to people who also have a special effects first class card. You You get 5 of them to agree that you know what you're doing. You submit that along with another set of fingerprints, your log pages, and you get your final upgrade to Special Effects First Class. It is a time-consuming and an arduous process. I'm not going to deny that, but it is hardly impossible. And I encourage people who are interested to start down the path, to not just dismiss it as being impossible, and you can get a lot of work as a 3rd class or a 2nd class working your way up. There's 42 roughly million people in California. There's only 128 Special Effects First Class cards. Of those, a lot of them are working in Atlanta, or in Toronto, or in Tennessee, or in Texas. So, and some of them are not really still actively working, or they actually have the license, but they now run companies that make, manufacture, or sell special effects equipment. So the number of people who are available to take this work is fairly small. It's at somewhat one of the lowest numbers it's been in a very long time. For the live pyrotechnic performances, working rock and roll concerts, things like that, magic shows, it's only a 2-step process, but there's only 77 of those. And there's only 480 licenses that can do outdoor fireworks shows. So they can only have 480 fireworks shows on the 4th of July right now in the state of California, unless some guy's prepared to do an early show, race across town, and maybe do a late show. So these are self-limiting, and the work is out there. I spend a great deal of my time giving work away to other people who have licenses. And although I always say I'm going to stop doing this when it's not fun anymore, there is a foreseeable end.
It hasn't stopped being fun yet.
It absolutely has not.
That's great to hear. So, if you could recall, what would you say is one of your favorite experiences doing pyrotechnics, either for a live event or for a motion picture?
One of my favorite, or one that's a good story?
I'll take both. I'll take the good story one first, and
All
then
right.
sort of one of your glowing
All right.
favorites.
This was at a live event. This was at the Hollywood Bowl. I did all the fireworks at the Hollywood Bowl for almost 40 years. And we were doing a live concert, and we had a very, very lovely and eminently qualified percussionist named Evelyn Glennie, who happens to be hearing impaired. And we had a fairly large fireworks show up on the roof for later on that evening. And some of the cues in the show involve dozens and dozens of devices at one time, and we have subsystems on the roof so that the electrical firing system is sometimes firing the devices, and sometimes it's firing a subsystem, which then has local batteries, so you have more oomph to be able to fire more at a time. So for safety, we would not arm those subsystems until after intermission in the second half of the show. And we had some brand new ones that had never really been fully tested. And Ms. Glennie was on stage performing. Now, bear in mind, this is a deaf percussionist. She, to some extent, basically plays by feel. And we're up on the roof, another associate of mine, and we go to these small subsystems, and they have what's called a shrouded switch, like you see on fighter planes, where you have to lift the cover before you can flip the switch for safety. So you go lift, click, the first one. Lift, click, the second one. Lift, click, boom! And a dozen fairly large-sized pyrotechnic devices hurtled off the roof. We are on top of the acoustical shell. We are not, really should not be surprised that it sent significant impact to the shell, which then vibrated onto the stage. And we startled the deaf percussionist, which I felt very, very badly about. In the meantime, we leaned over the roof, where my entire crew was looking up at us, wondering if we have survived this. And we said, "We're okay. Go to the truck, get 12 more comets, reload this, hurry." So we reset the show, and the show went on that night at the final piece of music. And there were 2 nights. So on the second night, we sent flowers to Miss Glennie, and we apologized profusely. 7, 8, 9 years later, we are back at the Hollywood Bowl. She is back at the Hollywood Bowl on the day before our show. We're only there to pre-set. The shows were large enough. It took 2 days for the first one. And I went backstage, and I found her sign language interpreter. And I said, "Hi, it's so nice to see you again. I don't know if you remember me." She goes, "Oh, yes. She remembers you." And she tells that story all the time.
Wow, something else. And how about what would you say would be one of your, that's a great story. What would you say are some of your favorite experiences?
Well, in order to get your last upgrade to special effects first class, mysteriously, and I've not been able to find anyone old enough to remember how it happened, you suddenly have the theatrical live performance scope of license in your theatrical license. So in order to get that final upgrade, they require you to have had some experience in that. So a lot of people who have their 1 cards had to come and work for me at doing live event work because, as they would explain to the state fire marshal, it's different unions. And the state fire marshal said, "We don't care. We didn't do that to you. You did that to yourselves. When you gave the TV to one union, the motion picture to a different union, sorry, figure it out." So a lot of them would come and work for me. And they would tell me that some of them would stay and continue working even after they got the experience they needed, because when you do motion picture special effects, you're out there with a second unit oftentimes, particularly in the larger effects. And you will do it in stages or pieces. Or obviously you're some of the biggest, but you're quite far away from them and the camera's remote. No human being is anywhere near it when these things are going off. And then the film will wrap, it'll go to post. 8 months, 9 months, a year later, the film will come out and you'll go to see it, and it'll be at a screening and there'll be an audience, and the audience likes the movie. But it is so detached chronologically that you don't have the immediacy of the feedback from the people who are seeing and approving your work. So they would say to me, "It's really, really cool working these shows. You'll come in the morning. This is why I got into it initially while I was in graduate school, because I had the time to do that kind of work. Nobody wants to pay to rehearse the fireworks typically. You'll come in the morning, you'll set it up, you'll shoot it off, you'll clean it up, you'll go home. It was outdoor, it was physical, it was a break from studying." And they say to me, "We really, really like this because when we do stuff, it's so detached and so unsatisfying. I mean, it's like you and 3 other people will watch this big orange mushroom cloud explosion, but you don't get the feedback from the audience until months and months and months later. But when you do live performance, it's right there. You do all that work, you put all that sweat in, and then 18,000 people stand up and cheer. And that's heartwarming. That's fulfilling to see that see people enjoying your work that way."
Very cool.
What do you say?
Well, does anyone in the audience have any questions for Mr. Guo or for Mr. Elias about working in motion pictures as a director or as a pyrotechnics expert? Hit us in the comments if you have any questions or if you'd like to say anything. And I'd love to hear if you're happy to share it. Like, would you advise people, if they're interested, just to pursue their dream in this or find out more about it? And how would you recommend they do that?
People come up to me all the time and they will say, "How do I get started in what you do?" And I'll tell them, "You just did." I am constantly expanding my mailing list. We do the motion picture television fire safety officer demonstration at least 3 times a year. We do one for the close proximity audience pyrotechnics at least once, hopefully sometimes twice a year. and I will have 20, 30, 40 people there with me to help on those. I help people start working on getting their licenses. I also teach Pyrotechnics at Universal Studios. I also have a seminar I put together for one of our local municipal theaters to put it on for all of their stagehands. Not so much how to do it, but how to work around it. I've recently been asked to teach in Nevada, so I'm putting together a non-California specific presentation for them there.
So basically, all these things you just named would be really good for someone that's trying to get their cards, because they can not only could they get a signature from you, but also meeting the people there. That's one of the quickest ways.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have to find 5 people with a license equal to or higher than the one you seek.
Right.
It's a really good chance they're going to be at one of my seminars.
This is also a good way to get mentorship and experience through people who've been through it. I mean, that sounds like the core fundamental principle of the way that the program works is essentially you need to learn by doing it, and you need to absorb some of the experience and knowledge of your forebears, right?
Absolutely. And you're going to have to be persistent. And sometimes you're going to have to work for cheap or free. And sometimes you're going to have to travel. And it may not be the most financially rewarding at the beginning level, but I can assure you that when you get to the upper levels, and if you are prepared to travel, you can absolutely make a living doing this.
Super cool. And it looks like we have a question coming in from the audience.
Yeah, Benjamin Bratton asks, do you get excited to do particularly unique or dangerous pyrotechnics, or is it concerning to get requests like that?
The short answer is yes, other than the dangerous part. Remember that safety is our watchword. And when you can thrill an audience very easily, you don't necessarily have to be dangerous. You need to create that illusion. At Universal, up in the theme park, we do multiple body burns every day. And it looks very scary, and you really are on fire. And we do a body burn at our seminars, and people say to me, "Did you ever want to do that, get lit on fire?" And I go, "No, not a chance. I will bring the fire extinguishers and supply them, and if they want, I will bring them the different fluids and chemicals they use to set them on fire, but I have absolutely no desire to be inside of that suit." But what we do is entertaining. It is very, very exciting for an audience to watch. I decided years ago, the materials that we work with, what comes from them, the colors are analog. They're not digital. It's fire. Human beings, through many, many years of evolution, we appreciate fire. We appreciate fire for the safety it affords us from predators, from the fact that it keeps us warm, cooks our food. And when audiences see fireworks, there is a very visceral connection to them. And it's rare that someone doesn't like fireworks. Some people are a little bit frightened by the noise, but you don't have to have noise to do fireworks.
No.
I mean, when we do all of our performances for all those years with a live orchestra, our job was to provide a visual enhancement, not an audible distraction. So you can have big, roiling orange fireballs, and the camera can't see 3D ordinarily, so they just see the actor in front of it, and they assume the actor's in peril. And it's exciting and it's entertaining. Far more so, no offense to our computer-generated image friends, but there is something about practical effects. It's different.
So let's talk about like purchasing the products to create these effects. You can't just go into a store and just buy them, right?
You cannot just run into the fireworks store or the special effects store. There are manufacturers and distributors, a couple of them in California, a few of them, there's a couple in Montana, several back east. Most of them will require you to have a license before they will let you purchase these things. There's a lot of stuff that you can get, ordinary household items, but I am compelled to say this, anything that you see us do, kids, don't try this at home. because the materials are very highly energetic and they can be very dangerous. You also, in the old days, if you went to your neighbor's house and as a malicious prank, you blew up their mailbox with something you might get in the way of illegal fireworks on the 4th of July, you would have to pay for a new mailbox and you might, be grounded for a while and you might have to pay for it. But ever since 9/11, it's now considered to be an act of terrorism. You do not want to get crosswise with any local, federal, state agency and pyrotechnic materials.
And for those that do have their licenses, where do you usually go purchase stuff besides online? Because I know everything's online, basically.
Well, there's two big suppliers right here in Los Angeles. Roger George Special Effects and Delamere Engineering in Burbank. And then all of Roger George's materials come from MP Associates. They're up in Ione, California.
Okay. Is Thane still there, or
Absolutely.
you want to kind of introduce who Thane is and what he's done?
Thane Morris is the M of MP Associates. The P is David Pyre. David Pyre has the illustrious distinction of being the only ever unrestricted pyrotechnic operator's license issued by the state of California.
Great name for being in fire effects too, Pyre.
Pyre, yes. It's P-I-E-R. Thane and David both worked on the miniature pyrotechnics of the original Star Wars films. And he still gets people mailing him stuff, photos, things to autograph and mail back, and he's quite good about doing it.
Yes, he still has the gun, the original one, the blasters, the Stormtroopers at the shop. So if you go there, you'll be able to see it. It's pretty
Yes,
cool.
he is a legend in this industry.
Yeah. Well, so before I met Eric, that's actually where I was learning all my stuff, was through Thane. So, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
But actually, the big question, really, I think, is when can you tell us like an example of something small for a movie you did, something medium, and something large? And then each of those things, can you tell us experience working with the director or the production crew and how communication worked with each one, whether they were good or bad?
I recently did a small but very entertaining effect for General Hospital. They were having a shootout in what was supposed to be a
Is that soap opera?
coffee warehouse.
What is that?
The soap
Oh,
opera.
okay.
The soap opera, which is the last soap opera I understand still on broadcast on network television. And in the shootout, one of the characters was to hide behind a rack full of coffee beans, and someone was to fire around at him, ostensibly hit the bag, split it open, and have the beans spill out.
On him, or?
Well, just
Oh,
out
okay.
and down on camera. And we spent all day, 15 or 16 to get it to work properly. It turns out that because of the shape and size of coffee beans, you have to have a rip of at least 5 inches before they will spill out and keep pouring.
Yeah.
That was the trick. You could get them to dump, but to have them continue to flow like the sands in an hourglass, you had to have at least a 5-inch slit. And then we had to build a wooden, essentially, funnel behind it to fill up with the beans to get them to pour out. And all day long, shoving my arm into the bag full of coffee beans to place the explosives to pop the slits, where we had 2 stitches to hold the cloth overlapping it. And for the rest of the day, I smelled like coffee. And finally, when I got home that night and took my shirt off, like, I don't know, maybe 3 dozen coffee beans fell out onto the floor because they'd been going up my sleeve and down my shirt. And after about 15, 16 times, we got it to work, and then we did it 2 or 3 more times to make sure that we could absolutely repeat it.
Right.
And they were very pleased with the effect. It's actually quite funny. It goes bang, pop, and then and they just kept going until they finally cut the scene. Because there was like, I don't know, 40, 50 pounds of coffee beans in there. Did a lot of special effects guys, I mean, I don't normally try and take work away from those guys. I spend most of my time in live industry, but I do a lot. And when I do motion picture special effects, I only do pyrotechnics. I don't take rain or snow or dust or breaking glass. Leave that to those guys who may not have the license I have. So I don't want to deprive them of their work. But most of them know what they don't know. By the time you get to be at 1 card, you have some significant experience and some practice. And most of them know that they don't know fireworks. So they will bring me in when they need to do a scene with actual fireworks. And unlike live events, the movie business does have the money to pay to rehearse. So
Oh, yes, yeah, yeah.
my experience in working with directors is that you've never seen a happier individual than a motion picture director who's watching his own personal fireworks show that he gets to say, stop and start on. So generally speaking, they'll write the script, they'll do the storyboard, they'll go to the effects guy. The effects guy will either already know me or after making half dozen phone calls, find out that the fireworks companies will not sell him fireworks, irrespective of him having a license, because they don't know who he is. And they'll all refer him to me, and then we will get together and we'll say, all right, this is what they say they want. I will tell them, no, that is not what they want. This is what they want, but we have to show them what they asked for first, or they won't realize that. So if you're lucky, you'll get to go out, have the director, have the DP, anyone else who needs to make decisions, come out somewhere out to the middle of the desert or some other remote location where you can randomly shoot off fireworks. You pull a permit to do it legally, and oftentimes they'll bring a camera to record it, to chronicle it for other people. And first you'll show them what they asked for. It's never correct. They will sit through it, and then you will suggest, perhaps you'd like to see this. Then you shoot off for them what you, as the experienced pyrotechnic operator, or as I call us, the wise-ass pyro guy, knows they really want to see, having seen the script and the storyboard. And you put that stuff up in the air, and they go, that's great! And then you say, we have one more thing to show you, and then you show them something that's way too big and completely out of scale, and you put that up, and they go, that's too big. I go, good, then we know where the sweet spot is. And invariably, it's right where we knew it should be in the first place. But if you don't show them both, they feel cheated. So then you go out to the set on the day that you're doing fireworks with a camera, and you set everything up, and you set up more than they asked for, and you set up different combinations because directors can be fickle. I apologize to all the directors out there, but that's what you guys are. And then you shoot off a bunch of fireworks for them, and they're like a kid in a candy store.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So I guess for me, like one of the last things would be, so let's just say I decide to hire you and I want to blow up this whole building. Technically, I want to blow up the whole city. But, you know, the city's too much, I can already tell. To ask that question, there'd be too many things. But from A to Z, what are the steps on how are we going to blow this building up? Like the permits, people you need to talk to, how does it go from A to Z?
Well, something like that requires a great deal of planning. And you're going to have to get various and sundry permits from different agencies. And the most important thing that determines that is going to be what's the artistic vision. If you want it to be something that's incredibly visual and you want lots of fireballs and debris and smoke, or if you think about it, if you've ever seen a Vegas casino come down,
Yeah.
it's kind of anticlimactic. There will be explosion, explosion, explosion. It's very loud, and then it drops and there's dust. It's not particularly pretty, it's not particularly colorful, but they're trying to keep it from slamming into the building on either side of it
Yeah.
or sending debris anywhere else. Did something once for a Halloween gag where we had the character Pinhead and his head was supposed to explode. So they did it with a cantaloupe, which is basically the same color as his skin, and a rubber mask. And the guy with me said, oh, we're going to put in this much. And I says, yeah, no, you don't want that much, too much. Well, we're going to try it. So I said, you really only want like this much. So we did it his way first. We rigged the whole thing up. And the idea was the live action actor would duck in behind, and then there would be a revolved turntable revealing the dummy with the rigged head and the explosives. And it revolved, and he set off this huge charge, and it was loud, but it just evaporated.
Vaporized.
It was like nothing. It was like a balloon had popped. It was incredibly non-visual. And I said, let's go back and try it with what I thought about. And we put the little one in, and sure enough, this time, revolve, boom, and chunks, everywhere slamming into the plexiglass shield.
Experience.
So the materials we work with are very energetic. They can be very, very dangerous. But years ago, the A-Team special effects truck was stolen off of a location here in Los Angeles. Everybody freaked out. They recovered it. It was just a joyride. But they were so worried about the materials. I said, you don't understand. If you tried to use what we work with to take down a building in a terrorist act, it would be very pretty, but it might not necessarily do very much damage. So just like we have to create sparks when a bullet is hitting a wooden fence, when things blow up in movies, there are huge gouts of fire and blooming clouds of smoke and dust and debris and stuff flying everywhere, which isn't necessarily what would happen if you were using high explosives for that purpose. So once we know is it being destroyed in an instant by a space ray gun? Or is it is it an oil refinery and it's
Right
just tanks blowing up?
Let's just say it's a high rise somewhere in China. And how would you, earlier you said you show them what they want. So how would you just build miniature scales for them to see how the explosion goes?
No, I think you do a couple of full-scale explosions. I think you would do like one story at a time and just say, because is it a real building? It has to be.
building.
It has to survive and be when we're done with it.
Let's just say that somehow we've managed to work with the local government and say, cool, you're going to destroy it? We want to destroy this building anyways.
Oh, it's going to be a mess when we get done, but it's not going to be destroyed. It's going to be a huge mess. It's going to be totaled, but you're then going to have to come along later on and really blow it up.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And to your point, I mean, probably the story dictates the type of explosion in a sense, right? So if it's like a particle beam, or is it like a petrochemical explosion, like there's like a gas leak in the building and then somebody lights a cigarette. I like thinking about the story of it because it's kind of funny. I mean, not really funny, but it kind of helps motivate, just like lighting, right? We want to motivate the lighting by what's actually happening in the scene, because if you have you can have all the lights in the world, but if it's not motivated by something, the audience won't necessarily feel anything, and it won't really tell the story any better.
That's
So,
why I asked what the artistic vision is.
Nice.
Are there, out of all your years working, are there any camera tricks that you've learned with using lenses and like your effects? And then were there things that other people taught you on how to do working with lenses and getting a certain kind of visual effect?
With fire, all the time. As I mentioned, ordinarily, the camera can't see 3D. So you can have fire between the camera and the actor or the set, and to the audience at home, it looks like the fire is right there with everybody else. There's a piece of equipment called a propane popper. It's a very heavy, machined rig that holds a single 1-pound propane tank. It explosively launches the tank against a large spear, and it dumps all the propane out one end in a couple of seconds, and then you have a source of ignition there. It gives you a very, very repeatable, but very, very controllable, large belch of fire. I have put those under a motorcycle, blown it up 4, 5, 6, 8 times. The flame shoots out under the bike towards the camera. It looks like the bike is engulfed in flame. At the end of the day, the guy who owned it got on it, started up, drove away, rode it home. But
Dang it, Bobby.
but on camera, it looked like, I mean, the other actor were like supposedly pushing a remote, and then this looked like the bike completely exploded. And once the flames started to die, they just cut away, and it looked every bit like the bike had been engulfed in a ball of fire. You can put flame bars on a C-stand and have flame just coming up from just below the camera. And again, depending on the focus, it looks like whatever you're looking at is being engulfed in flame.
Do you make any suggestions for lens choices when it comes to the special effect or the effect that you're about to shoot? Would you recommend?
They don't want to hear that from me. But I do suggest, here's like 3 ways we can try it. Why don't you go record and then pick the one you like? Absolutely. I mean, that obviously what they want to see at the end is up to the film crew.
Right.
It's integral for the blocking too. So, I'm sure you're a very instrumental part of blocking for these things. It's one of the easily forgotten aspects of block, light, rehearse, shoot, the 4 principal modes for filming, right?
Yeah. So what are some of the things you would hope that the film crew would understand when they come meet you, or before they come meet you, or before they come talk to you about your job, so that it's a pretty smooth conversation, pretty smooth communication throughout the whole process of getting the shots?
Well,
Go back.
obviously, safety meetings are a very important part of this. Everyone needs to know what to expect. Everyone needs to know to be prepared for the non-zero chance of something performing in an inartistic fashion. So again, it's always about safety. Anyone who doesn't need to be there probably shouldn't be there.
Safety is no accident. That's one of my favorite quotes.
People will say to me, where's a good place to stand? I go, if you want to be safe, go and stand behind the effects guy's Corvette. You'll be safe there. So, we're always worried about that. Obviously, there are guidebooks and codes. One of the things they specify is that the effects guy is not, under any circumstances, to be rushed. If they say they need 20 minutes to reset, you have to give them 20 minutes. But again, you're all working on the same movie. At that point in time, it's important that there be collegiality, that people respect each other. That's why the suggestion, I would not suggest what lens they should use. That's not my place. Similarly, I don't want someone to tell me, I know you said to put the cameraman here, we're going to put him there. And at that point in time, one of the advantages to being at this stage of my career is I can go home. I'm never going to do anything that's going to put anybody in peril.
Very good. And B, I think we had a question coming in from the audience. I'm happy to help pass that on.
Yeah, George Wolf asks, any jobs that you passed on you later wish you had done when you saw the show or movie?
Any regrets of passing on anything or fear of missing out?
Not that I can recall. I basically am at a position, I have been for a while, where I get to pick and choose what I do. So there are occasions where I haven't so much as passed on it as been already booked. As I said, I can't be in 2 or 3 places at one time. And yes, I have said, I'll take this one, you take that one, and then wish I hadn't swapped that direction. But not of any great, historic significance. It may turn out that I have one tomorrow, which was going to be all day, and a lot of stuff, and a lot of work. And I got a phone call an hour ago, it's down to 1 piece of flash paper. So it's going to be a very short day. And I'm okay with that. As I said, I just spent an entire week teaching 6 8-hour classes on this to 6 different groups of people at Universal Studios. So the occasional half a day off is just fine with me.
So how do you separate the work balance life for doing this, since you're in such high demand?
Both of my kids have been doing it with me since they turned 18. My son has followed in my footsteps professionally and has also 2 different careers going at the same time. He's been kind of busy lately to upgrade, and my daughter's a performer, and she oftentimes will incorporate effects into the shows and things that she does. And whenever she can, and it's convenient and not too much of a pain, my wife will come and watch my work. Particularly the live events.
Oh, the concert.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I used to travel when I first started, and then my son was born and I stayed home and traveled less, and then my daughter was born and I basically stopped traveling. And my wife said, I don't care what time you come home at night, but you're coming home every night. And my kids are grown now, and as I said, I've been sent to Nevada to teach. When I was sent to Hawaii to do a show, I did insist on a second plane ticket, and an extra week in the hotel, and she came with me, and she was fine with that.
Of course.
Another question coming in. What has been your most challenging pyro stunt?
Well, I've done stuff hanging from helicopters.
Ooh.
Sometimes some of the most challenging things turn out to be a bad idea. And you may oftentimes want to suggest alternatives to people. I did get a call just a few weeks ago on a Wednesday that said, "We're doing a magazine shoot on Saturday. We want you to set Ryan Gosling on fire." And I said, "Yeah, no, that will not be happening. Not with 3 days. No, sorry, no. Maybe you'll get a stuntman, or maybe we'll use a mannequin since it's still photos," and that's what we ended up doing. I can remember working on a concert years ago for ELO, and we spent all day in the heat, outside, in the parking lot, setting up just hundreds and hundreds of pounds of explosives. And it was grueling. And then it all went up in like 8 minutes. I don't think you could have burned the money in 10s and 20s as fast as we burned it up in Pyrotechnics.
Wow, what a treat. Well, I gotta say, I'm excited to, hopefully have the chance to join you one of these days when you're doing the demos.
Absolutely.
And it was really a pleasure to have you on. Are there any questions or words of advice you'd like to leave us with before we sign off for today?
Well, when I meet young children who see what we do and they're enchanted or attracted to it, I tell them that if they behave themselves until they turn 18 and they don't play with matches or otherwise get in trouble with fire, that they're welcome to look me up, and I'm happy to help them get started in it. And I make the same offer to your audience.
So cool.
If they're interested, I'm happy to advise, consult, send hints, tips. If they're in California, I have an email meant just for people in California who are interested in getting into this. A lot of stuff you can look at. I have a bibliography of books on pyrotechnics if somebody's interested in reading about it.
Super. What is the best way to get in touch with you, Mr. Elias?
How many people is this going out to?
We're live with the internet right now. It could be in the several hundreds, not immediately, but yeah, in the hundreds probably.
All right. If it's in the hundreds, I'll give you my email address. It's fireworks, FIREWORKS, at my name, Eric Elias. Fireworks at Eric Elias, ERICELIAS. If I get hundreds of emails tomorrow, it might take me a while to get back to you.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Guo, also a pleasure. Is there any parting words of wisdom you'd like to share with us, or any questions you'd like to ask about anything
just
else?
like Nike, man. Anything you want to do in your life, just do it.
Awesome. Love it. Well, if you are new to the Atlas telecast, we do this every Tuesday, and we're doing a special series called State of the Industry. I do have one parting question. How do you feel the current state of the motion picture industry is in terms of, we're in a kind of a macroeconomic crisis worldwide, it seems like, and, some people are very worried, other people are less worried. And definitely that's affecting our industry, I would say, because, it seems like there's generally less work in the motion picture world. And it sounds like being able to do the live production, live entertainment seems like a good counterbalance to that when it's quiet in motion picture. But do you have any kind of observations about where we're at, and any advice for people who are in the industry and fearful for their jobs or fearful for their macroeconomic condition?
Everything economically is cyclical, and there's absolutely a downturn right now. I can tell because all of the licenses who were too busy to return my call a year or so ago to take work I had to give away call me on a very regular basis right now. So I know that things are down. Obviously, I hope that things pick back up again, both for the motion picture work that I do and for all of my friends who survive on it. I think that it will come back. I think that practical effects are not really going to be replaced by digital anytime soon. I think that there's a reason why the higher budget productions do actual practical effects. It does still look better and more convincing. And just like it takes perseverance and dedication to progress in this industry, in this particular field that I'm in, it's the way it is with the entertainment field in general. It's specialized, it's niche, it's narrow, and I think the work will come back. But again, you may have to travel.
That's a message I can get behind, and yeah, I'm also optimistic overall, and I think that, as you said, cyclical, and
It's renaissance coming.
yeah,
There's a
For sure.
renaissance coming for sure, because you have these kids that are doing the YouTube stuff and the TikToks, the Instagrams. TikTok won't be around much longer, but the way they're going to be looking at filmmaking or telling stories, particularly, because no one really shoots on film, it'll be a different, because my niece and nephew, they don't know the stars. They don't know. They know who Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie is, and, you know, the ultra on top. But they don't care. They can tell you who the next influencer is for cars or for makeup or for food, but they don't know who the actors are. So there's going to be a new way of filming and doing stuff and acquiring people to watch certain types of stories. So it's just right now, I'll just say greed. That's literally what I think it is.
well, this too shall pass is what my grandmother used to tell me. So, shout out, Grandma. And perseverance, you know, tenacity, grit. I think these are all important qualities to explore and imbue into our practices. And
Don't give up, man. Like,
don't give up.
yeah, don't go back home to wherever you come from and then try to come back when things get better. Because for me, at least, if you come to Warner Brothers, I'm not gonna hire you. You got to be here with everybody else, toughing it out. And that's how I know you really love it. And that's how I know there'll be quality pictures. And then we'll get to that, because there's a lot of people just like me that have the same mentality. It's kind of like China, you know, when the old people kind of passed away, all of a sudden China opened up. And it's the same thing. People that are in power now, they're going to get older, they're going to retire. And it's the younger generation, again, the renaissance, that will happen. It happens every so often. And so I don't think filmmaking's in a bad spot. I'm sorry, I don't think storytelling's in a bad spot. Maybe I'm just being optimistic. I don't have kids, I don't have any of that kind of stuff. But I think it's doing what it needs to do with the YouTube, with how we have short attention spans. And it all comes to formation at some point. That's what I believe.
Wonderful. Well, we'd love to hear from you. If you have an outlook about what is going on in the state of the industry, no matter where you are in the world, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment in the comments below, or shoot us an email to info@atlaslensco.com. If you're passing through the Los Angeles, California area, please come by Atlas Lens Co. headquarters any Wednesday for Wednesday Lens Day. It runs from 10:30 a.m. to 1:30 in the afternoon, and that's at 6933 San Fernando Road, Glendale, California 91201. You can email us at info@atlaslensco.com. We're really excited about Cine Gear, which is coming up in a little over a week. Be at Warner Brothers, so great to see you there. Hopefully, if you have time, maybe we'll have you by for a coffee or two. And look forward to seeing you either at Wednesday or at the next Tuesday telecast. No matter where you are, stay safe, have fun, and keep practicing. Get better every day. All right, we'll see you soon. Take care.